Hey guys, today we're going to be talking about the curly girl method and whether or not I think it's worth it for you to follow the curly girl method. But before we get into that, if you are new here, hi, my name is Taylor. I am a 5-year naturally wavy curly girl and busy mom of 2, here to help you learn to love and embrace your natural waves and curls with simplicity and without compromising a bunch of your valuable time and money. So the first thing I want to talk about is a quick breakdown of the curly girl method rules. So they are no silicones, no sulfates, no parabens, no phthalates, no alcohol, no wax, no heat, not even with your diffuser, no brushing, so no hair brushes, no combs. The only thing you can use to detangle your hair is your fingers. And there is also within the Curly Girl Method book, there is a really big emphasis on co-washing your hair to cleanse your hair, and then that's the only thing that you could use to cleanse your hair, and then also extending your washes. So I wanted to give my opinion on these Curly Girl Method rules as someone who has been wearing their hair naturally curly for 5 years now. So let's talk about the ingredient rules of the Curly Girl Method. What I like the least about the Curly Girl Method is that it is very cut and dry, which some people may find helpful when they're first starting out in their wavy curly hair journey. But I don't think that it's as simple as sulfates and silicones are terrible for your hair and these ingredients are okay for your hair. The Curly Girl Method claims that silicones coat your hair and block out moisture, and the only way to remove them is with a sulfate, which is then stripping your hair and is too harsh for your hair. I don't think that the ingredients are the issue. I think that it's not knowing how to use them correctly. So with silicones, there are water-soluble silicones, which will wash out of your hair without a sulfate. You don't need sulfates. And with sulfates, they can be very beneficial for your hair, to clarify your hair. Curly hair products, whether they have silicones in them or not, are very heavy. And if you're using a very gentle cleanser, your cleanser may not be removing all of your product. So the thing I like the most about the Curly Girl Method is that it gets you in the habit of paying attention to the ingredients in your hair products. And then over time, by recognizing these ingredients, you'll start learning what these ingredients are doing to your hair, and you'll start learning what ingredients your hair likes and how to use these ingredients properly. And whether you follow the Curly Girl Method or not, that skill of knowing about ingredients and looking at the ingredients in a product, that is going to be essential in your curly hair journey. So as far as the other no-no ingredients, so parabens and phthalates, that really comes down to your personal values and how clean you want the products to be that you are using. But then wax and alcohol, there are moisturizing alcohols. So learning to recognize what's a moisturizing alcohol and what a drying alcohol is essential. But then also, and this goes for wax as well, with your ingredient list, the lower something is on the ingredient list, the less there is of it. So even if it's a drying alcohol, if it's lower on the ingredient list, you know that there's less of it, and you may find that your hair has no problem with it. And wax is on this list of things you shouldn't use because it can build up on your hair. But if it's lower on the ingredient list, there's less of it, and you may not find that you have any problems with it. And even if wax is higher up on the ingredient list, then you know to start looking out for that product building up on your hair. So about the last of the Curly Girl Method rules. So brushing your hair. I think that it's totally fine to brush your hair if you know how to do it properly without damaging your hair. Of course, if you're ripping your hairbrush through your hair, you're going to damage it. But if you know how to do it properly, you're not going to damage your hair. It's going to be totally fine. I don't think that it's necessary to only use your fingers. If you have a lot of hair or a curlier texture, that's going to be really hard to do. It's not practical. So I say it's totally fine to use a hairbrush. And then there's heat styling. So I really think that in the beginning of your curly hair journey, when you're really focusing on mending your hair and your hair becoming healthy, I think that it's really important to stay away from straightening or using a curling iron on your hair. Your hair needs time to learn how it's supposed to be naturally, how it wants to be naturally. And if you continue on with heat styling all the time, that's really going to hold you back. But I think that it's totally fine to use heat with your diffuser when you're diffusing. I don't think that that equates at all to using a straightener on your hair. I personally think that it's okay to use a little bit of heat when you diffuse. And lastly, co-washing. I got into this in my last video where I talked more in depth on some of these Curly Girl Method rules. I'll have that linked up here and in the description down below. Co-washing just isn't going to work for everybody. It just isn't. It doesn't work for me, and I've been wearing my hair naturally curly for 5 years now. It's just not going to work for everybody, so I don't think that it's practical to ask that everybody co-washes. And then there's extending your washes. Do I think that it's safe or healthy to wash your hair every day? Probably not. For some people, maybe. That may be what your hair needs, but the majority of us, we probably shouldn't be washing our hair every day. But at the same time, I don't think it's okay to only wash your hair once a week when your hair might need washed more frequently than that. For me, I have to wash my hair usually 2 to 3 times a week. So I don't think that it's fair to say everybody should wash their hair once a week. Some people are going to need to wash their hair more frequently than that. So, do I think that you should follow the Curly Girl Method? My answer is, I think that strict Curly Girl method, so following every single rule, I don't think that it's practical. I don't think that it's very doable. And I don't think it's necessary to follow all of the rules. I think that if you wanted to follow a modified version of this, that would be great. That's what I have been doing personally for the past 5 years of my curly hair journey, is following a modified version of the Curly Girl Method that works for me and my hair. So you also may be wondering, Tay, which Curly Girl Method rules do you follow? And here's my answer. So 98% of the time, I use a sulfate-free shampoo. And then about 2 washes a month, I will use a sulfate shampoo to clarify my hair. I have very hard water where I live, and I like to use a clarifying shampoo with a sulfate to clarify out all of that hard water, and plus all of the heavy curly hair products that I use. So as for silicones, I have just chosen not to use silicones in my curly hair journey because I've had a lot of success without them. So I've never really felt the desire to revert back to using the silicones. Now, if a curly hair product would pop up that everyone's raving about or that you guys really wanted me to try that had silicones, then I would try it. I'm not afraid of using silicones, and I don't think that silicones are terrible for your hair. They just are not what I have been using, and I've had a lot of success without them, so I've just stayed away from them. So as for the other ingredients that you're not supposed to use with the Curly Girl Method, so wax and alcohol, I'm not going to not use a product because those are in them. If it's a good product by a good brand, I'll give it a try. You have to look at the whole makeup of the product. I don't think that it's fair to judge it by just one ingredient that's in it. And then there's phthalates and parabens. With being pregnant last year and now breastfeeding, I've really been trying to pay more attention to when those are within a product. But before that, I really was not strict with myself at all about whether or not that was in them. Like I said, it's really your own values and your own personal preference on those things. I don't know, I may sound terrible for not prioritizing those, but that's just where I'm at personally. So you make your own judgment call on that. So then the other Curly Girl Method rules. I use a hairbrush to detangle my hair. I detangle in the shower when my conditioner is in it with a brush. I use low heat with my diffuser, so technically I use some heat. And then I don't co-wash, and I wash my hair twice a week. So really, what I want to tell you about the Curly Girl Method is that following it strictly, I think, is not practical, but I think that it's totally fine to kind of nitpick the Curly Girl Method to pick which rules you do and don't want to follow. So I hope you guys found this video helpful. Let me know in the comments down below if you follow the curly girl method, your thoughts on the curly girl method. Are you going to try the curly girl method? Let me know in the comments down below. So the next video in this little curly girl method series is how I would recommend you start your curly hair journey. So what I'm going to be sharing in this video is more of a modified curly girl method for beginners. So thank you guys so much for taking the time to watch this video. Make sure to like and subscribe, and I will see you again next week.